Today's guest is a CMA nominee and hit songwriter who's also the son of a hit songwriter. His father wrote songs like Who's Gonna Fill Their Shoes for George Jones, Chisel and Stone by Vern Gosdin, and Look at Us by Vince Gill. The apple did not fall far from the tree. And our guest has written songs like Love Me by Colin Ray and A Night to Remember for Joe Diffie. He has also had cuts by artists including George Jones, Randy Travis, Diamond Rio, Trace Atkins, Alabama, Ray Stevens, Ralph Stanley, Montgomery Gentry, Vern Gosdin, and Billy Dean, among others. Max T. Barnes, thank you for hanging with us today.
Hey, Brent. How you doing, old buddy?
I'm doing all right. It's good to see you again. It's been a while since we've been face-to-face, so it's good to catch up. That's
yes,
one
sir.
reason I love doing these.
Hearing lots of great stuff about you out there. I'm glad you're on the scene and helping people all over.
Well, thank you. I know you're doing the same. So, Max, my goal for today, for this hang, is to inspire, educate, and motivate some of our fellow songwriters. And I just wanted to do that by having an honest conversation for about the next half hour here, and just by keeping it real. So you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I like to start these off by talking about the cuts and the bruises. Your best story of a cut, whether it's your biggest cut or just one that is personally, your favorite for whatever reason that story is. And then follow that up by your best or most painful story of not getting the cut or some other type of music business bruise. And just let the people watching out there know that, hey, this life, even if you're blessed with success, as you have been, it's not an unbroken string of, green lights. It's not all wine and roses. So you ready to launch into some cuts and bruises?
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's start with the good news. Give us a good story of a cut.
Well, the easiest, if you've ever had anything put on hold, it's anguishing. And it goes on and on forever, right? And there's very few tales of happiness at the end of those. I mean, just the odds are so bad, and you live your life from one hold to the other, and you always think, well, I got this on hold and that on hold, and it goes on for months and years sometimes. But probably the easiest and the most best and fruitful was the one that was my biggest song, Love Me. I came up as a guitar player. I was out playing lead guitar for Linda Davis, who you might know from Does She Love You with Reba McEntire. They won a Grammy for that. But we was on the road touring with Garth Brooks, and backstage came the DJs for the meet and greet, and they recognized my name, said, Max T, we love your new song. And I said, I don't have a song out there right now. You're probably thinking my daddy's always got two out there.
Right.
I said, no, it said Max T. And I said, oh, well, I wasn't going to argue with him. So I got back to town, and I'd never heard of this artist, and I didn't really even recognize the name of the song they said, because you know how sometimes they'll chop off a word here, or they use the title a little different. But when I got back to town, the song was Love Me, which that wasn't the title I remember it being. And the artist was Colin Ray. Nobody had ever heard of him before. And it was number 33 on the single charts when I found out it was cut. And it went on to be number one for 3 weeks and a CMA nomination, Song of the Year.
That's awesome. So what was the original title of that?
It might have been I'll Be Loving You, Love Me. I don't really remember. It's just one of those that, you know how it is. You write songs every day and you throw them in the pile like there's, like you're chopping wood.
Yeah.
You don't remember. It's like, hey, you remember that piece of wood you chopped 2 years ago? No, not really. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you have to kind of let go of them a little bit and not hang. You gotta keep moving forward.
Yeah, well, just the sheer volume you can't think about. I mean, my feeble mind couldn't keep up with them. Yeah. Sorry, there's notifications going off here, but yeah.
Oh, it's okay. We don't see them here. I've heard it said the mind is a great place to have ideas, but it's a terrible place to keep them. So I think that's true. I couldn't, I can't play any of my songs, but so that's great. Yeah, I have that Colin Ray record right over there somewhere in my stack of CDs. So cool. I tore that song up back in the day. So I was a big fan of that song. So it got me writing sincerely and earnestly back in my early days. So, before I got all crotchety. So that's awesome. So did you know that song was even on hold before you found out about the cut? So it was completely stealth. All that happened without,
completely from nowhere. I knew nothing about it. And as a matter of fact, I'd seen pitch sheet. Remember we used to get the pitch sheets.
Oh, yeah.
And there's an artist on there named Bubba Ray.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, wow, good luck getting a record deal with a name like Bubba, but he had a
Yeah.
record deal.
Hmm.
But they changed his name to Colin, and they changed the name of my song, and I never knew it was even looked at or anything till it was 33 on the charts and going to #1.
So I'm assuming then that song was through with a publisher at the time, and they handled all the licensing and stuff. They just didn't. They
Yes.
just have a big
Yeah,
roster, and they just didn't get around to telling you, or.
that was I was signed with Troy Seals had signed me to Warner Brothers.
Mm,
So I had a co-deal with Troy and Warner Brothers, and they weren't aware of it. And back then, gosh, you know, back then it was it was like taking a sip of water from a fire hose. There were
yeah.
so many cuts and so many singles. Everybody was cutting, having, selling platinum. It was a great time
Yeah, that
in
was
the
like what,
business.
92, maybe 93, somewhere in there?
Yeah, it might have been 91. But
Okay.
Troy Tomlinson, the president of Sony, I think he's retired now, but he was a good friend of mine. And I don't use that word lightly. He was a good friend, and he's the one who actually got that song cut.
Oh, that
Because
makes him a
they
good friend.
Yeah, but he was a good friend before that. But he told me the story how he got it cut. He had played them everything, and they weren't that much into it. And he goes, "Wait, I got one more thing I want to play you." And they came back and sat down, and they played him that song, and that changed everything. I'm told.
Wow. Yeah. That's great. That's one thing too about the 90s music, because that's what I cut my teeth on, is that stuff. And the that's a very emotional song. Of course, Colin was great at those ballads and very emotional
Mhm.
stuff, and you had a lot more of those artists in the 90s.
Mhm.
And that's something that it feels like is, and I'm not going to gripe about now versus then or whatever, but it's something that's kind of missing from a lot of artists today. Is you don't have those lanes of like the Colin Ray, the Doug Stones, the Vince Gills that are just like emotional and vulnerable and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But love that stuff. So that's great.
Yeah,
So
that era is gone, and people ask me why isn't there those songs anymore, and they wouldn't be hits today.
yeah.
They're too much of a story song.
Hmm.
And if you write, and I know the young folks today are trying to get things cut in today's genre, but
Hmm.
if you bring anything up with a hook, even a hook, they say, "Oh, that sounds '90s."
Yeah. It's like, because it sounds like I thought about it for a minute. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know. So that's well, let's segue that. So that's a great story of it cut, and I love that song. Let's go into a bruise, and we all have them. So let's
yeah.
press on a bruise for a little bit here.
Well, I've got lots of them. Well, one little, I got a few of them. I'll tell you. One little quick one was that song was nominated for CMA Song of the Year, "Love
Mhm.
Me," but so was my dad the same year for
That's
"Look
right,
at
and
Us" with
that
Vince
was the
Gill.
first time in CMA history, right? A father and son had been up against each other in
That's
songwriter
right, and
category.
ever, even now, it's never happened in any
Yeah.
category. So, so he won that night. We didn't win that, and I got to tell you, that really did hurt because I was a
Mm,
young guy. I didn't know how to guard my heart for
yeah.
something as big as the dadgum CMA awards. I think it was only 27 or
Mhm.
28. I didn't know how to handle myself. But I mean, I'm not saying I cried or anything, but it was like getting hit in the stomach. And
Yeah.
my dad had already won CMA Song of the Year once, so it's his second one. And I told him, I said, "That's selfish, Dad. It's like the guy who wanted me to donate him a kidney, and now you have three."
Yeah.
No, but of course, we were all delighted.
Mhm.
We shared all that. My mom and dad, uh, they stayed together their whole life, so I didn't have, what we were all together, a family unit, and
That's
my
great.
mom didn't know what to do. It's like, do I root for you? Do I root for dad?
Oh,
It's
that's
very
rough.
strange. Yeah, but
Yeah.
then other things like the song that you might have mentioned, um, "A Night to Remember."
Joe Diffie.
Trey,
Yeah.
yeah, Trace Atkins had cut it, and you know how you just drool over these things, and you wait and you hope and you wish and you pray that they'll cut them. And
Mhm.
finally, I knew that they'd cut it because they'd been in the studio, and one of the musicians said, "Yeah, they cut it. It turned out great." I'm thinking, great. I really felt like it could be a single,
Mhm.
but then time went by, and neither Scott nor Trace called me. Scott Hendricks is his producer. Neither one of them called me to let me know how it come out, and I was getting kind of suspicious. So I finally called Scott, and he said, "Oh man, it turned out great, man. It's great. It's great." And then he kind of trailed off and said, but the snare sound, I'm not really sure about it.
Uh,
So because they didn't like the snare sound, it didn't make the record. So, that hurts
yeah,
because you're
and,
thinking,
listen, why didn't you do something about that in the writers' room? You should have figured that out, right? That's how dare you let that slip past you?
that's right. If you think you know everything about songwriting, watch your snare sound.
Right, on the guitar vocal.
Yeah,
That's brutal. So, but
yeah.
thankfully that did have a happy ending because it charted for Joe Diffie. I
It
remember hearing it on
it
the radio.
did, yeah. It was a big number one for us for Joe Diffie, and I just got a BMI thing, 2 million airplay.
Oh, nice!
So
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. I'm really happy. I love Joe Diffie, and I love Trey Seconds too. I got
Hmm.
something on his last record, but it's all fun. That's the nature of this business, and the more you can understand that, the more fun you'll have.
Yeah, you just have to kind of keep moving on. And that's the thing I tell people. Songwriting is not for control freaks. Like all you can control in a sense is what happens in the writer's room that day.
Mm.
How hard you work. But that's about what you can
Yes.
control is your work ethic. Now you can't control the magic pixie dust. You can stand with your lightning rod to try and attract the lightning, but you can't even control that. But then yeah, once you get out of the room, there's so much you can't control, like the drummer's snare sound in the studio that you weren't even there for that. You had to get
Yeah.
secondhand that it was even cut. And that's the thing maybe some people don't know is that a lot of times the songwriter's not in the studio. I mean, obviously you didn't
Yeah.
even know about the Colin Ray cut till it already charted. So, we're not in
Yeah.
there with
There's
our fingers in the pie on everything. Most of us aren't. There may be a few who are writer producers and that sort of thing, but
yeah. There's a few writers who get in there with artists and stuff. Mostly, mine has been done at arm's length because when back in my day when we was doing it, they had us writers and we were working as hard as we could up until lunch, then we go get drunk. But then we was working as hard as we could to write the best songs we could, and
Mhm.
then they had pluggers or pitch people who go out and work as hard as they could to get those things cut. So, but a few times, like I had a number one with Billy Dean called "That Girl's Been Spying on Me." I was
Ah.
invited to watch that go down, and I was there for Randy Travis "Before You Kill Us All." That was a number one, and it just getting to watch them, watch it come alive. It's just like
Mhm.
demo day on steroids.
Oh yeah.
When you got the sounds 10 times better than it is
And
on
you're
a
not paying for
demo.
the studio time.
Oh, yeah. Well, and then you hearing this artist, who's an artist you hear on the radio all the time, sing your song in the
Mhm.
studio. It's a great feeling.
Oh man, and I forgot you're on "Before You Kill Us All." Yeah, Goldfish is floating at the top of the bowl. That's a good
Yeah.
song. All right,
Thank you. I would say if you don't, one of the things I tell people, and I do seminars to teach people how to write songs, but the more different you can, you got to hit them with something weird on the front, something, just hit them in the face
hmm
as soon as you meet them.
yeah,
That first line of that song is, "I must be doing something wrong, baby. I don't know, but the goldfish are floating at the top of the bowl." And I guarantee that's why we got that song cut. It's just weird.
yeah. But it's completely on topic. It's on theme, and it's an image, and it sticks with you. But it's also relatable and not out of
Mm.
like a bit of fantasy. The goldfish, they float at the top of the bowl. They're notorious for dying. It makes
Yeah,
me think
yeah.
of a Cosby episode. But so it's on point, it's on theme, it's pointing to the hook, it's all going there, but it's out of left field because it's not the normal cliche that you hear in a song. But so it works on all
Mhm,
these levels, which is part of what makes it a great line. And it's one that I
mhm.
was able to pull out, you know and I hadn't heard that song in years, but I listened to it a lot back then. So that's awesome. So yeah, and he's not a bad singer either.
Oh, man.
That's always nice. So we talked about your dad a little bit, Max D. Barnes. D as in daddy. So I was like, it's a good way to
Mhm.
remember that. I saw that on your website. Um, and so growing up with, Hall of Fame songwriter, what are some of the lessons you kind of picked up from him that, you've applied to your own writing?
Um, he never was one to say, do this or do that, but, just by being around him, if you never saw anybody else write songs, tried to write like him.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that came more natural to him than it ever did me was to keep it simple. He was so easy. He was so naturally gifted at saying things simply. and it was harder for me, and still I have to slap my hand, make myself obey,
Mm-hmm.
is to try to keep it as simple as you can, where the words just flow so easily,
Mm-hmm.
and to try to make it very easy and fun for someone to sing. And
Yeah.
he was great at that, and just, he always had a joke. He always had a way about him that was, he was a fun guy to be around.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're fun to be around, people want you around, and that's how you wound up, hey, what are you doing next week? You want to come on the bus with us and write? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's how he wound up in Vegas with the Highwaymen, and doing it, just everything, getting to be around all the fun stuff. He was a great teacher by just watching him.
That's great. And that's a powerful lesson too, the power of simplicity. I think of it as being a couple things. Your songs they can be simple without being simplistic, right? You can talk about complicated, big, heavy, weighty things, but present them in a simple way that's easy to digest. And that's another way I think it's easily consumable, easily digestible. It doesn't, get stuck in their throat. It doesn't, give them indigestion. It's easy to kind of process as you're listening down. For the listener, but that doesn't mean it has to be simplistic ideas and no
Mm.
brainers. You can still, those are fun. You can do those, but you can still talk about big, important, weighty things without overcomplicating it. And I'm the same way too. I can overthink things and try to be so clever. And I remember, and I think this maybe with a lot of writers, I started off writing probably simple and simplistic. And then I started getting more craft. And then I started going, oh, look how complicated I can be. All this stuff I can cram in there into this maybe back then 4 minutes of song. Wow, look how much I got in there. And then hopefully, you come out the other side going, how little in a way can I say, or how can I say it so simply that it just cuts through the heart of the matter? And I'm saying one thing, but I'm saying it very, very powerfully. So that's an important lesson, I think, for songwriters, is to try and keep it simple when you can, and being a good hang. I think bringing a good hang is as important as bringing a good hook, because if you bring a
That's
good hang,
absolute.
you're going to get more chances.
That's absolutely true. You've been writing for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and I have too. And you know that there's people that aren't that great uh, technically to sit and write with, but
Mm-hmm.
they're a lot of fun to hang around with.
Yeah.
And you might wind up toting the whole bag of mail, but you've had a good day.
Mm-hmm. And some are
And
here, vibe people. They just bring a good vibe. I'm not sure what they bring to the right, but we had a good day and we enjoyed it and we wrote a good
yeah,
song, and
yeah,
can't pin any of it on them, but I want them back. I was like a
yeah,
rabbit's foot.
absolutely.
How do
And
I get that
sometimes,
gig?
and sometimes it's like they might throw out that one magic line that it just wouldn't be the same without that little
Mhm.
sprig of tarragon in there.
Yeah. Or they're the
Or
cheerleader
yeah,
that makes you
that's
feel
true
good. Yeah,
too.
man, it's great. Keep going. Keep going.
That's right. Even when you know they're full of
Yeah.
poo. Yeah.
I'm so terrible at that, because I'm always so thinking, going, yeah, I think so. Is it? I don't know. Let
Now,
me chew
now
on
I'll
it some
tell you,
more.
I'll tell you a story of. I won't tell you the name, but I hate. I won't write twice with somebody who's knocks all my lines down. I just won't do it,
Mm-hmm.
because number one is not all my lines stink, and
Right.
so I just won't. I just won't even. As a matter of fact, sometimes I won't even finish the ride. I'll get sick or something.
Right. Exactly.
But there's this one artist, and it's a big, big artist, and I was writing with another writer. It was a three-way for this. It was a record, and it was for a single, and we sat there and wrote and wrote and wrote, and this guy was knocking everything we did down, everything,
The artist or the
and
third?
the artist,
The artist.
and
Okay.
me and the other guy, good writer, we kind of made face signals to each other. It's like, let's finish this when he's not here. And sure enough, we did finish that thing without him there.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, he didn't record it, but another big artist. And I'm not saying the names, but
Right.
that artist didn't cut it, but yet he got his name on it. It was a million seller on another artist. So sometimes you got to really work hard to just get to work.
Yeah. I don't like those rights either, because it flips from serving the song to just trying to get a yes out of the other writer, and it's a different headspace, and it's not as much fun going, oh, this is awesome. You're just going, this is awesome. Is this? How about this? Can
Yeah,
I serve? yes, sir. How about this? How about this? Is this? And that gets pretty frustrating. Yeah, I don't do my best work under that too. Then I'm serving
Mhm.
up the writer, not the song. And I like to.
Well, as you know, because you've been writing a long time, there's 100 or 1,000 different situations,
Mhm.
and that's just one, and almost everyone's unique, you know.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then they start fitting in categories, and but each one, it's a lot of fun. Even if you're an amateur or you're just getting started, it's just really a lot of fun.
It is. I mean, there's really almost nothing else I'd rather do than sit in a room with a buddy and write a song,
Hmm.
because it's what I do best. It's my happy place. It's social. It's fun. We do a lot of laughing, and yeah,
Yeah,
it's a whole lot of fun. A
yeah.
lot
It's
more fun than
mostly
writing by
about
myself.
absolutely. It's mostly it's just the most of the hours are chewed up by jokes and you
Hmm.
know light gossip and you know just news around the town. It's
Right.
a good hang.
Yeah, it is a good hang. Talking about artists and stuff, I'd like to talk a little bit about at serving the artist. And so obviously not in a, hey, entertain me and write my song for me in the room here, but your string of cuts obviously suggests you've learned how to kind of service an artist. So I saw a little bit of that up close when we were both writing some songs for Ray Stevens. So what kind of service mindset should a songwriter have as far as thinking about, you know, hey, this artist is trying to connect with their fan base? Do you think in terms of that? Because I know, like with the Ray Stevens thing, some of the stuff you had cut on Ray, some of that stuff that we wrote, and I know some stuff I wrote with Matt, would not be cut by anybody else. It was like written
Hmm.
specifically for Ray, like aiming at
Hmm.
Ray, and it worked. And it's okay that it wouldn't have been cut by everybody else, because we were trying to write the right song, not necessarily
Hmm.
the best song on the planet, but we're trying to hit this target. How
Hmm.
have you balanced the two, like writing specifically for an artist, going, hey, would Ray say this, or would so and so say this, versus just going, I'm just going to write the best song I can in the room that day and see what happens?
Well, well, pardon me.
Mm-hmm.
The answer to this one is those we were in Ray's camp, so
Mm-hmm.
anything we wrote for Ray that was good enough was going to get cut by Ray.
Mm-hmm.
So it when you're in that circumstance, there's no, I mean, you just completely go for it. So that's a no brainer. But I
Mm-hmm.
have like another friend of mine was in with the Oak Ridge Boys, and they wanted a Christmas song, and we wrote this wonderful song called something like "It's an Oak Ridge Kind of Christmas," and I'm telling you, it was the best Christmas song you've ever heard. And they passed on it, and we wasted a day or 2 days on that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I've tried to tear it apart and make it a something else kind of Christmas, but it just won't work. That doesn't
Yeah.
make me mad, of course. That's just the job. It's kind of like if you're a tailor making random size suits, you're gonna if most people are medium, you should make a lot of medium suits. You shouldn't make a lot of fat man suits or skinny man suits.
Right.
You know, you should make medium suits if everybody's medium. If you're a tailor, so that's pretty much like that. And sometimes like the one I had a hit on John Schneider. It's the number one for us called "At the Sound of the Tone," way back in '87, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the lyric on that thing said um, something like, "I'm sorry I can't take your call because I'm packing up to go away. And John, if that's you, you're just canceling lunch anyway." And it says John in there,
Right.
and John Schneider cut it, but I actually wrote it with John Connolly in mind because
Mm-hmm.
he was having hits at that time. It just, good luck there.
You hope that they either have a single syllable name where they could change it to Mark
Yeah,
or Bill or Bob,
right.
or
And like
they can
if
have the
something you
imagination to change it.
if something in those you can translate it to the artist today, but if something is good for Trace Atkins, it's probably good for Randy Travis or Joe Diffie. And if
Mm-hmm.
something's good for Reba, it's probably good for, a couple other girl artists. But they come in, threes or fours, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And I'm sure they do today with the modern artists.
Right. Yeah, they do. There's certain lanes that people occupy, and
Yeah.
the way I look at it is, um, if you aim at artist X and you miss on them, but it's their lane, but they just, you tried and they just haven't cut it yet. Well, there may be another artist drafting on them that are similar. They may not be as big as like a Luke Bryan or
Hmm.
Florida Georgia Line, but they're kind of drafting on the same lane, to use some NASCAR
Hmm.
lingo. they're coming up behind them in that same lane, and you might be able to land something on them, even though you maybe didn't even know that they were around yet because they're a baby artist, or maybe they'll come along in a couple of years kind of doing what that artist did when that artist has moved on to something else, and they're kind of sliding into that spot. So
and there's
hopefully none
also
of it's wasted.
Also something to be said with hitting somebody way out of left field. Like when they pitched Randy Travis that the Before You Kill Us All song, he wasn't doing anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was completely out of his deal. And I'm sure sometimes that really is something very, very fresh, and it takes an artist in a brand new direction.
Yeah, that's
so.
It's a balancing act. It's kind of what I tell people,
Yeah.
Because like with the Ray stuff, we definitely aimed at Ray. There's one song that Ray cut on the same record. You have a couple on that We the People record that I wrote years before, back before I had any, ends in his camp or anything. And I wrote with an independent artist, a buddy of mine back in Arkansas. And it went so political. I was like, no one is ever going to cut this, but he cut it on his own record. So it was like, okay, cool. So we had a demo of it. I never, ever pitched it until finding out that Ray was working on the kind of record he was working on. So I pitched it one time and it got cut. So it just sat around for years and should never have been cut, and would never have been cut by anyone else if I hadn't known what Ray was up to, which just comes from relationships and keeping your ear to the ground and being around long enough to try and figure out who's doing what, when, and because there's not a whole lot more frustrating than going, so-and-so cut a record and I had the perfect thing for that and I didn't even know they were doing that kind of thing.
Absolutely. My dad passed away 16 years ago now, and he had a great run in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And the stuff he wrote in the 70s, people ask me all the time, will you give us some songs? And people are still cutting stuff he wrote in the early 70s. And it's just because, it's still a great song.
Yeah.
It has that simple thing. And you just don't know when songs don't die. They just, they're waiting there for the new owner.
That's awesome.
Like a puppy at the pound.
There you go. Yep. Got a lot of impounded puppies. All right. So you mentioned that you've been, doing workshops and teaching and stuff. And as we're kind of closing in on our time here, you've been doing a lot of traveling, a lot of teaching. Can you tell us a little bit about the Vortex Springs Songwriters Festival we talked about before, that it's coming up soon?
Yes, sir. It's going to be really cool. We just announced, because we just got word Richie McDonald's going to be there with us.
Awesome.
From Lone Star. I'm amazed, and I'm already there. And then we got Gary Hannon, who wrote Tequila Makes Your Clothes Fall Off, and we got Win Barble, who wrote
Have You Forgotten? Waiting on a Woman.
Waiting on a Woman. So much. Yeah. Jim McBride, Chattahoochee, just so many great artists. We got, but it's April 17th through 19th, and you can come. It's in Ponce de Leon, Florida. It's about an hour north of Panama City, and they got camping, they got horse trail riding, Jeep trails, RV hookups. They got condos, they got cabins, they got a spring, 39 million gallons of fresh water every day. They got scuba diving. It's water slides. It's unreal what they got. And this year we're having a Songwriters Festival. So if you want to come down there and enter the Songwriters Festival, you can, if you get the package that has my 2-day songwriter seminar, the title of my seminar is Write Better Songs and Get Them Cut. So that's the name of my seminar. That's a 2-day thing. And then you can come up on stage and sing your song with us, with the pros. And then there's a chance to win $1,000. We're giving away $1,000 in cash prize money for best song, first, second, third, best melody, first, second, third, and most unique.
Cool.
And so there's a lot there, and it's a very reasonable ticket price. You can go on Eventbrite, Vortex Spring Songwriters Festival, or just anywhere. Just look up Vortex Songwriters and you'll find it.
Excellent. So that's coming up in April. That's 2020 in case you're watching this in the future. But hey, if it goes well, there might be another one in 2021 and 2022. So don't be afraid to look at that if you're catching this hang in the future, which you will be because it hadn't even posted yet. So it's bound to be the future. So
everything's in the future.
Everything's in the future. Everything from here on. That's right.
Yeah.
So Well, it's been fun hanging out. It's been fun catching up and even realizing some songs that I already love that I didn't even realize you wrote. So that's one of my joys as a songwriter is when I find out, like, see a buddy's name on that song, go, he's on that. I love that song. I didn't even realize he was on that. So that's personal warm fuzzies for me. It makes me happy.
Oh, neat. Well, let me brag on you a second. For all you
Oh
folks who
well,
don't know, Brent is one of the coolest guys. He is the great hang. He is the smart guy in the room. And when he comes, he's always got a great story and a great title. And he's the quintessential songwriter that you want to write with, and the guy you'd want to learn from. So I would feel like you're in very, very good hands. Anything you learn from Brent, you learn it from the right guy in the right way.
oh, thank you, Max. I feel the same way about you. Honored to have you hanging with us, sharing some stories, sharing some great insight. And so if you're checking this out, Vortex Springs Songwriters Festival, and I will be actually teaching up in Alabama right around that same time. So hopefully I'll see y'all in 2021 there. So, all right.
2021, we'd love to have you. Thank you,
That'd be
buddy.
great. All right. Thanks, Max. Thanks for hanging with us. And y'all,
Cheers from
thanks for watching.
Florida. All right, bye-bye.